Every time you rush to explain yourself, every time you answer immediately, every time you react without pause, you're giving away pieces of yourself. And the truth is, not everyone deserves that kind of access. What would happen if, instead of reacting, you chose silence? Not to punish, not to hide, but to take back your power. Have you ever noticed that certain people walk into a room, and without saying much at all, everything shifts? They don't need to shout. They don't beg for attention. They don't even argue. They just sit back, maybe withdraw a little, and suddenly everyone around them adjusts. The atmosphere bends in their direction. People sense something is different. They start to wonder, to ask questions, to fill the silence with their own insecurity. That kind of presence isn't loud, but it's powerful. Now here's the uncomfortable question. What would happen if you did the same? If you stopped answering every call the second it came in? If you chose to remain quiet instead of snapping back when provoked? If you stepped away from the endless cycle of explaining yourself to people who don't even care about your explanation? What would that silence create? Most people don't realize this, but the world has been conditioned to expect your availability. People expect your time. They expect your energy. They expect your reactions. And because you've been trained to comply, you give it without hesitation. But the day you stop, truly stop, the entire game changes. Those who believed they knew you suddenly see a stranger because the version of you they thought they controlled is gone. Carl Jung once said that what irritates us in others can be the very thing that reveals ourselves. Think about how that applies here. The moment you become less accessible, who gets nervous? Who starts pushing harder, trying to trigger the old version of you that always reacted? That irritation they show tells you everything. It's not about your silence. It's about their dependence on it. They need your predictability to feel powerful. And this is where the manipulation becomes visible. For years, maybe decades, you've given yourself away in fragments. You said yes when you wanted to say no. You explained yourself when no explanation was needed. You rushed to answer questions, to smooth conflicts, to show up for people who, if we're honest, would vanish if the roles were reversed. And every time you did that, you handed over a piece of your energy. What's left at the end of the day? That tiredness you can't explain, that emptiness you can't name, that frustration that builds in your chest without a clear reason. I'll tell you why. It's because you're giving too much of yourself to people who don't even value it. You're always available, always reachable, always ready to play the role they've assigned to you. And for what? Here's the bitter truth. Your endless availability isn't kindness. It isn't virtue. It isn't even loyalty. It's a trap. And you've been walking in it so long you mistake it for normal life. Since childhood, you've been told that your worth is measured by how much you give. Be agreeable. Be polite. Don't say no. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. Smile even when it hurts. And so you grew into an adult who feels guilty for protecting their own peace. Somewhere along the line, you learned that love meant self-abandonment. That connection meant compliance. That acceptance meant becoming useful. But usefulness is not the same as being valued. And predictability is not the same as being loved. People don't treasure what they can always take for granted. They don't cherish what never requires effort. They use it. They consume it. They put it back on the shelf until they need it again. And if you've been feeling invisible, overlooked, or underappreciated, this is why. You've made yourself an emotional convenience store, open 24 hours, no boundaries, no closing time. Jung had a term for the mask we wear in public, the persona. It's the polished version of ourselves we present so we can be accepted. For many of us, that mask says, "I'm fine, I don't mind, I can handle it, I'll be there." But behind it, exhaustion, resentment, silence that's never spoken. And while you're busy keeping that mask in place, your real self fades further and further into the background. You're starring in other people's stories while your own life slips out of focus. Here's something you may not want to hear. Being available to everyone is a disguised form of self-neglect. It looks generous on the surface, but at its root, it's fear. Fear of being unloved, fear of being abandoned, fear of being misunderstood. So you keep giving in hopes that someone will finally give back. But that transaction rarely comes. Instead, the more you offer yourself, the less they see your value. Because no one respects what they don't have to earn. Think about the times you've been drained by conversations that led nowhere. Think about the people who only reach out when they're in crisis. Think about the guilt you've felt when you didn't reply right away. That guilt isn't natural. It's conditioning. You've been programmed to believe that being constantly accessible is love. It's not. It's control. And here's where things get even sharper. People who expect constant access to you don't necessarily want you. They want what you provide: validation, distraction, emotional support. You are a resource, not a person. That's why when you start to pull away, they accuse you of being distant, selfish, or cold. It's not because you changed. It's because you stopped being convenient. So let's be clear. Silence is not weakness. Withdrawal is not cowardice. These acts, when chosen with awareness, are acts of strength. They're how you reclaim your energy, your time, and your dignity. Because every word you speak, every reaction you give, is an investment of your inner energy. And not everyone deserves access to that. This doesn't mean shutting yourself off from the world. It means making choices, choosing when to respond, choosing when to explain, choosing when to simply walk away. Because true power isn't found in reacting to everything. It's in knowing when not to react at all. But here's the catch. Once you begin to change, once you start stepping back, people will resist. They'll push harder. They'll test you. They'll accuse you. They'll try to drag you back into the role that benefits them. And this is where most people give up, because it feels uncomfortable, even lonely, to stand in silence while others clamor for your reaction. But remember this: the noise you hear when you first withdraw is temporary. At first, silence feels like a void. But if you hold steady, that silence becomes your ally. It turns from emptiness into clarity. And clarity is dangerous to those who feed off your chaos, and liberating to you. When you start choosing silence, something fascinating happens. You begin to notice who grows louder in your absence. Some people can't handle the quiet. They text more. They push harder. They demand explanations. It's not because they suddenly care more about you. It's because their usual control is slipping. You're not giving them the same predictable reaction, and that unsettles them. This is where many people confuse silence with punishment. But it's not about punishing anyone. It's about protecting yourself. You're not withdrawing to manipulate. You're withdrawing because your peace matters more than constant conflict. Your calm matters more than being right in every argument. And your energy matters more than being available to anyone who snaps their fingers. Here's something you may not have considered silence teaches. When you stop explaining yourself to people who never listened anyway, you teach them that your voice is valuable. When you stop rushing to fix problems that aren't yours, you teach them that your time has limits. When you stop answering every question, every demand, every request. You teach them that access to you is not a right. It's a privilege. And privileges can be lost. This is why so many people panic when you change. Because the old version of you, the one who gave without boundaries, was convenient. They could rely on you to be predictable. But the moment you start protecting yourself, they lose that convenience. You're no longer a tool they can pick up and put down. You're a person, and people who only valued you for your utility don't like being reminded of that. Let's be honest, some of the people in your life don't actually want you to grow. They want you to stay the same, predictable, compliant, and easy to control. The moment you start setting boundaries, the mask slips. Suddenly, their concern sounds more like accusation. Their jokes feel more like attacks. Their advice reveals itself as manipulation, and while it hurts to see, it's also the clarity you need. Because once you see someone's true colors, you can't unsee them. And here's the irony, the very people who once told you to toughen up, to stop being so sensitive, are often the same ones who can't handle your silence. When you finally stop reacting, they accuse you of being cold, distant, or even cruel. But ask yourself who's really being cruel here, the one who chooses peace, or the one who demands access at the cost of your sanity. Carl Jung wrote about the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves that we'd rather not face. Silence has a way of exposing those shadows, both in ourselves and in others. When you withdraw, you might feel guilt rise up. That guilt is your shadow. It's the conditioned part of you that believes you're only worthy when you're giving. Sit with it, notice it, and then ask yourself, who taught me this? Whose voice do I hear when I feel guilty for protecting myself? Chances are, it's not your own. It's an echo from the past. A parent, a teacher, a partner, maybe even a friend. And once you recognize that, you can begin to separate your true self from the noise of conditioning. The beauty of silence is that it creates space. In that space, you can finally hear your own thoughts. You begin to realize which desires are actually yours, and which ones were planted there by others. You see how much of your life has been spent performing roles you never chose. And in that space, something powerful emerges: choice. Choice is what you've been missing all along. You didn't realize it because you were so busy reacting. You were constantly on defense, constantly explaining, constantly justifying. But silence puts you back on offense. It gives you the pause you need to ask, do I even want to respond? Do I even want to be here? Do I even want to give my time to this? And when you realize that the answer is sometimes no, you start to understand the real meaning of freedom. But freedom isn't comfortable at first, because it requires loss. You will lose people. You will lose their approval. You will lose the version of yourself you've been performing for years. And it will sting. You'll feel the ache of distance. You'll second-guess yourself. You'll wonder if you made a mistake. This is the test. Most people fail it. They rush back into the old role because the silence feels too heavy. They mistake loneliness for abandonment. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't mean you're alone. It means you're clearing space for something better, something real, and that takes patience. The people who truly value you won't vanish when you stop over-giving. They won't crumble when you say no. They won't disappear because you stopped answering immediately. Real connections survive boundaries. Fake ones don't. And that's the gift silence gives you. It filters your life. Think about how much energy you'll reclaim once you stop performing for everyone else. Think about the projects you'll finally have time to start. The hobbies you'll rediscover. The peace you'll feel when your phone doesn't control you. That's not selfish. That's living. And here's something to consider. The world isn't going to slow down for you. People will keep asking. They will keep taking. They will keep demanding. If you don't learn to create distance, no one else will do it for you. The cost of never stepping back is simple. You burn out. You collapse under the weight of everyone else's needs. And by the time you realize it, you've spent years living as a ghost in your own life. But you don't have to live that way. Start small. The next time someone asks for your time, pause before you say yes. The next time someone provokes you, breathe before you answer. The next time you feel that urge to explain yourself, stop and ask, do I owe them an explanation, or am I just afraid of being misunderstood? You'll be surprised how often the answer is no. You owe nothing. And when you begin to live like that, everything shifts. People see you differently. They may not say it, but they notice. Your presence feels heavier, more intentional. You're no longer scattering your energy everywhere. You're directing it where it matters. That's what makes people pay attention. Here's the final truth. The most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Not because you're suppressing yourself, but because you're choosing your battles. You're choosing your peace. And when you finally understand that, you realize that silence was never emptiness. It was strength waiting for you to claim it. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. The next time you feel guilty for saying no, pause. The next time someone accuses you of being distant, pause. Ask yourself, am I really being distant? Or am I finally being close to myself? Because at the end of the day, that's the person you've been neglecting all along, not them you.